You're listening to another great episode of We Speak Dispatch, sponsored by our friends at Watson.
Welcome back to another phenomenal episode of We Speak Dispatch, because if we're speaking dispatch, hopefully y'all are speaking dispatch as well. We have got a great topic today that was sent in to us. We'll talk about how you can send in what you'd like us to talk about at the end of this episode. But first, let's get into the introductions. We got Doug. How's it going, Doug?
Good. And you said y'all. I guess that was in reference to where I live now. Tennessee.
Yes, you're in the South now. John, how's it going there?
Fantastic, sunny and warm.
Excellent. And Miss Showalter, Jill, where are you and how you doing?
I'm in the outdoor studio and I'm doing amazing. It's really nice. It's been cold all week.
Yes. And the beauty of having a screened-in patio.
No
bugs. My God, that's so
no
good.
bugs.
Yay.
No bugs.
No bugs.
So this topic came to us through email, and it is all about how to get involved beyond the workstation, beyond the console. So let's talk about maybe what did you do when you were at work, or encouraging people the value of getting involved. So John, I'm going to start with you first. What was some of the ways that you got involved outside of just going to work 60 hours a week?
Picking up more overtime.
Oh, yes.
So, aside from that, I think even, one thing that came to mind is we have two sizes of agencies, three usually, small, medium, and large. And the smalls typically are small, sometimes 1 to 2 dispatchers on at a time. Medium, you have a couple more, and large, you have the world by your side. Mm-hmm. So there's different opportunities available. When I started, I was in a small agency. I was at a university police department. So really the only thing was to just learn new systems that were being implemented, and then educate, or we call train, those who were going to start the job after me. So
right,
those are kind of the easy ones to start, no matter the makeup of a staff.
That's right. Yeah, doing a little bit more than just let me worry about me and what I'm doing. Doug, what about you? Because I know you were fully involved in a number of different ways, but how did it start and how did it progress?
I think it started back in the early 90s when we had some social unrest in downtown LA.
Hold on. I just want to skip back to the early 90s. Wow. Okay, anyway.
So back in the early 90s, we had some big time social unrest in downtown LA where I worked. And we were taking our command post out and parking it with 2 or 3 other agencies. So it looked like we're basically circling the wagons out there. And it got us a chance to kind of talk to the other agencies and see what they've got and what they do. And it kind of inspired me through my entire career. Like, why don't we get out of our comm center and go see what our allied agencies are doing? So we started all kinds of ways to do that with National Telecommunications Week. We go bring out things to everybody else. Instead of saying National Telecommunication Week is Christmas, what are they going to get us? It was, hey, let's go tell our allied agencies, thanks for being there. And then you get to meet these people and say, wow, they've got a cool job too. So I really think it's a good idea to get out of the comm center and go do something like that and kind of stay within your parameters of your job, stay within what you're doing, but go out and see what's going on out there. We've met so many cool people from other agencies that you never would have met if you just sit in your comm center. I mean, you talk to them on the phone once in a while, but you don't get to meet these people. So, which is kind of how I met Leslie the first time at that law intercom meeting. Anyway, so go ahead.
Yeah. Anyway, that's another story. Jill, what about you? How did you get involved at your center? Because you came from, to John's point, a fairly large agency, right?
Yeah, I did. Everything we did was mostly in-house. And then they had asked me to train, and I, in training, learned about other APTO, NINA, Navigator conferences. And I decided going to conferences was my way to get out and learn more about 911. It opened my eyes to so many things that you don't know. You don't know what you don't know if you're just sitting behind a console 8 to 12 hours a day. I had no idea there's this entire world that's talking about next gen 911, that's talking about training. It's just a completely different world out there once you step outside your console and start learning and meeting people. And we, one of the other things we would do at my center is we created a challenge point. And then every year for Telecommunications Week, we created a t-shirt. So
Mhm.
you can still be involved, but beyond the console. You're not just sitting there.
Right.
We were doing other stuff. Go to conferences, you meet people. We would go to the little local conferences, you would meet allied agencies. So it was fun to talk to people that you only ever talk to on the phone.
Right.
So
Right.
it's
Yeah,
a
I'm glad you
completely different
mentioned.
world when you start meeting people face to face.
Yeah, I'm
So-
glad you mentioned that, Jill, because you were mentioning like Nina Navigator. Those are the big ones, you know,
Yeah.
the national, international conferences. But if you really want to get down to like how you do things, maybe in a locality or a state,
Yeah.
go to a local one. Sometimes
Mhm.
states have 2 conferences a year. I know coming from Virginia, they had one on the east side of the state in the spring, and then the west side in the fall.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And so it kind of gave everybody, well, if you wanted to go to both, I guess you could, but you know, it's going to draw different people.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly. And I always thought
Yeah.
that was fun, going to the local conferences. And we had Mideastern APCO where I was at, and then we had our day of celebration, which was more local. So we'd like our super local one, and then we had a local one. So that was
Mhm.
fun outside of the bigger conferences. But yeah, that's what we did.
And
I just
Leslie,
wanna
you've
say that
gone to Cal Nina, right? Leslie, you went
have,
to Cal
yeah.
Nina, and that's it's a statewide for California. It's a really huge place, but
Right.
it's
For
still a
Nina. Yeah.
small-ish thing. I mean, I've been to it a couple
Right.
of times. It's weird. So
Well, and
Um,
it is, you know, to what Jill's talking about, I had the same experience. It was years of being in the dispatch center before I realized there was such a thing as Nina and APCO and
Mhm.
Navigator and all of these, you know, dispatch adjacent opportunities to go out and network. And I know Nina has a ton of working groups where I know that most dispatchers don't often like to be told what to do without having any knowledge of why they need to do this new thing. And so Nina creates these working groups where you can now be a part, no matter what your rank or your tenure, you can be a part of these working groups to talk about accessibility issues or Next Gen 911 or AI in the comm center, just mental wellness and resilience. I mean,
are
there's a
those in
ton of
person or are those virtual or what are they?
they are virtual. They will meet in person if they have enough people that maybe show up, because we've got the national conferences coming up here in a few months, all in Orlando. But people will come together and have their working group meetings there as well. But yeah, that's a huge opportunity to lift your head up and realize, gosh, there's so much going on
Mhm.
out in the world. I know I was at Utah not too long ago, and there was the manager there that is the way she decides who gets to go to these conferences is she sets up. I wouldn't necessarily say it's a contest, but if you know, use X amount of PTO time and you sign up for X amount of shifts and you don't call in sick and, you know, all of these different criteria, then your name is put into a hat and then, you know, a name is drawn and you get to go and be a part of a conference. And I thought that was super cool.
Oh,
So,
that's cool. That's a lot of fun.
yeah.
Didn't they do
I
that
thought
with you
that was-
guys, Jill? Didn't they have something like that where, how did you get to go to that Vegas one? Didn't you have to do something for that or? No?
No, so so this was during back in 2011, I believe, and they were furloughing us and they had said no out of state training. Well, I said, hey, if they're gonna pay for in-state training, if I figure out how to get hotel and airfare covered, if they pay the cost of the conference, because essentially it would be the same as being in-state if you're just covering.
Right.
So I found 2 friends and the rooms were, I guess, like 150 a night or something like that. So we all shared a room. We paid 150 for 3 nights, and then we flew out to Vegas on Southwest. So it was super cheap. So we put this plan together and we presented it to our higher ups, and so many people were like, "That's dumb. You're not going to be able to go. They're going to turn you down." They said not site training. I'm like, it's worth a shot. I don't mind it if they say no. Like it went all the way up, and I'm like, if they say no, at least they know I have interest in it for the next conference.
Mhm.
Well, like typical, it got approved, and then everybody was really upset because nobody else got to go. But it's the same people who were saying you're not going to be able to go are the ones who are ticked
Right.
off that 3 of us were
Sure.
going, that we were able to come up with this plan to go, hey, you know what, let's try it. And I
Yeah.
mean, ever since then, from that point on, I did go to conferences every year and people would get upset, but nobody was putting in for them. And I'm like,
Right.
hey, if it's local, I'm going to try. So
Yeah.
it's just a matter of sometimes just asking, and
Yeah,
you don't
one
know
of
what
the
you don't
things-
know.
Yeah, one of the things I introduced to an academy class at one point when part of the center, maybe it lasted 2 classes, who knows, was just introducing what APCO and NINA are. And just, maybe in an intro book or in an introduction, when you have people starting off the same day in your organization, and they have like a welcome guide to the center, is include just a snapshot page
Right.
of what APCO, what NINA, and the local websites for the state chapters are, and obviously talk about it because no one's going to know what they are. And these are just outlets to explore as you get comfortable.
Right.
I think that's important to state, hey, we need you to focus on the job and focus on the skills and the performance so that you can be successful at our organization.
Mhm.
But know that there is early on something more than beyond this console.
Right. Yeah. I know of an agency too, and we've talked about the national level. We talked about maybe the regional, the state level, and even the local level. But this agency was big into community outreach and making sure that they were representative of the community in which they served, and they really expected their employees to be a part of that process. And so there's things like the National Night Out and neighborhood watch meetings and school job fairs and stuff like that, where those were great opportunities for dispatch and call takers to go out and be a part of those conversations and really be that, hey, when you call, we've all heard about how call takers and dispatchers, and I certainly did this when I was working, people call and you're like, oh my gosh, why are they asking these questions? And well, why not take that as an opportunity to go out and educate the people who are calling and let them know, hey, when you call and we're asking these questions, this is why, and giving them some insight into what happens behind the curtain, and potentially teaching them some crime prevention skills and stuff like that. And this particular agency that I'm talking about, it was something that, as part of their schedule signups, because it was an expectation, but they didn't want to force everybody to do it, because there's nothing worse than forcing somebody to go and talk to people when they don't want to talk to people.
Yeah.
But they said, okay, so if you go out and you go to a neighborhood watch, you go to National Night Out, you do any of these extracurricular things, you earn points that you can then cash in when it's time for shift signups. So instead of it being just basically, seniority based, where somebody who's number one, they're number one because they've been there the longest and they just won't leave. Somebody, maybe I'm a brand new person and I'm fired up. I can go and do all of these extra things, get connected, get involved, and potentially have more rights when it comes to shift signups than the person who's been sitting in the seat for 25 years and all they want to do is come in and do their 40 hours and go home. And I thought, that is awesome.
I will tell you that I think sometimes that I've had the experience two ways. One is I worked for a very large agency that really didn't push sending people to like these conferences and stuff like that. It was very much like top echelon will go, nobody else is gonna even know about it, and they won't go either.
Right.
And then I had to kind of take it to my own center and start things like Danish with a dispatcher, like coffee with a cop. And we went out in our community, and it was so successful that people were showing up like crazy to come to Starbucks and see us pouring coffee and talking about dispatch and stuff like that. It was super successful. And I did lots of, county fairs and things like that, that people were like, how come we didn't get a go? Have you ever asked? Have you ever asked to do these things? I mean, you don't want to go in there going, how come Doug gets to do it? Go in there and say, hey, I think this would be a great way to get our message out to our public that we serve. Boom, like that. And it's like, you just have to kind of ask in a nice way. When I remember the first time I asked about coffee with a cop, my captain was like, oh, hell no, it's going to be stupid. That's not going to work. And I'm like, well, let me try it. And we tried it, and damn thing was so successful. He was like, okay, all right, I got it. And it's like, we have to kind of do things that maybe you haven't even thought of. You're like, I didn't even think I could do such a thing. Maybe start it. Go back and start talking about how I can get this thing going.
Yeah.
So what would you guys recommend, though, for people that work for agencies that don't encourage that kind of stuff? But you want to do it because you're like excited. Like Leslie said, you're one of these newer people that want to do it, but your agency's like, nah. What do you guys think they should do?
I would just keep asking. Like every time there's a new
just
opportunity.
ask like 30 times in a row, just can I?
Here's an opportunity. Here's why I want to go. Because I think when we did it for my agency, we had to write a write up. It was like what you're going to learn from it, this, that, and all the other. I think, that's it, justification. So I think if you write those, eventually somebody's going to say yes. Like, don't give up,
Mhm.
work towards it. Like,
Yeah.
if you can't say change agencies because that's not really fair.
No.
It's just one of those things. Maybe just start small instead of going to like Navigator Nina or APCO. Go, hey, you know what? There's a local APCO conference coming to the area. How about we start there? Or hey, can we host a training or something like that?
Yeah.
Because there's
I think
so many
those-
places.
Cool.
I think those
That's a
night
good
out
idea.
things that Leslie was talking about, that's a great way to start the ball
Yeah.
rolling. Because everybody's
Mhm.
going to do it. Everybody's going to be out there showing their wares. And it's like, you might as well say, can I go too? It's like, I know it's
Right.
my day off. I don't want to get paid for it. Let me just go out there and try it. Once
Or maybe
it's
scope it
that's
out.
happening, doing it.
Scope
Yeah.
it out one year,
Well-
and then the next year be able to articulate what you guys can do and how it would work.
Absolutely. Well, and I know, we've got Dispatch Appreciation Week coming up, or depending on when you're listening to it, it just happened. But even starting even a little bit smaller is get your team involved. And I think Doug may have mentioned it before, where, hey, what is everybody doing for me? And instead make gift baskets or something to appreciate all those centers that you work with. And then say, and I want to drive it over to CHP, or I want to drive it over to the neighboring agency, and I want to drop it off. And then that's your first step of, oh, I'm expanding beyond the four walls of my communication center. And I know, Doug, from that, you've got even, and maybe you're willing to share it on this podcast, but this whole sit-along program where the dispatcher exchange, and that often can be started by that first person walking into your center, just dropping off, cupcakes or whatever during Dispatch Appreciation Week. And now you've got a whole
I
outreach
think that
program.
was the biggest success part of that whole thing about National Telecommunications Week, because we could have had like the supervisor take the stuff to the other agencies. You're not going to get an effect with that. I'd rather cover you on the floor while you go take it over there, and dispatcher to dispatcher get to see that kind of stuff. And even, I hate to even say it like this, but even those agencies that they don't want to participate. Oh, I don't want to do that. I don't want. Once you give them stuff and say, hey, we want to thank you for being in our allied agency, then they kind of feel a little guilty. And they're like, maybe we should do something like that too.
Mhm.
And we started that, and man, it like exploded. Every agency was trying to top the other one. It was just.
Yeah, you were getting gifts in March because everybody was like, I want to be the first one.
People were showing up early, and I'm like, it's not even the week yet. And they're like, I know, but here you go. So,
Yeah.
and
What
some agencies,
some people are doing now in agencies I'm reading nowadays is they started like mini academies for high schoolers. So just
Yeah. Oh,
getting
yeah.
involved in that.
yeah,
And if you're not, one of the full-time instructors or dedicated instructor, maybe talk to one of those individuals and say, hey, can I sit in a session and see how this goes? And
Yeah.
then get up and even talk about a little bit or contribute or co-facilitate something.
Mhm.
And that could be a
I
win for
think
everybody.
I think a lot of
Yeah.
agencies don't realize the talent they have on the floor.
Amen. And
I
amen.
teach these classes sometimes, and we do this exercise where we sell the job during what we call an elevator pitch. It's
Mhm.
60 seconds long. You got to make the pitch of why somebody should work for you. I've done this all over the place. There has been so many great ideas that I'm going, look at all the talent that's here. I had you do this in 5 minutes, do a 60-second presentation, and it's that good. That talent is there. It's just people don't want to draw from it and say, let's pull that talent and let's see what people will give us. And
It's a
so
good
cool to
exercise.
see that.
Awesome.
It's a good exercise until your kids are doing boomers with cowboys and Indians.
Oh yeah. Well, I did a generational thing, and I asked people what represents each generation. And I've had a few agencies when it comes to boomers, they're drawing, tombstones. And I'm like, people. I'm like, that's rude. It's mean.
Yeah.
So, and
It's
somebody did
me,
draw
though.
cowboys and Indians, and I'm like, how old do you think I am that there's cowboys and Indians? It's like,
Yeah.
just
This
be willing
was
to try
an
these things.
amazing topic. And thank you to the person who sent it in and said, hey,
Yeah.
I want to get involved. How can I get started? So phenomenal job. We will be talking more about all of those topics that you send us. So Jill, Doug, you want to tell people how can they submit ideas for an upcoming podcast, or how can they even be a guest here and be a part of the conversation?
So
Go
you
ahead,
can
Jill.
you can send us an email to wespeakdispatch@gmail.com. You can get us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. all the podcast platforms out there. Send us an email. Let us know you want to be a guest or just ask us questions, and we'll try to get them answered on our podcast. And that was this. This is
Awesome.
one of the ones that was sent in. So
Cool.
Nice.
Fantastic. All
Nice.
right. So y'all go out and make it a great shift, because we want to hear from you and what's going on out in the world. And we look forward to talking to you soon. Have a good
Awesome.
one.
Beyond the console.
Thank you for listening to another great episode of We Speak Dispatch, sponsored by our friends at Watson.